So thank you very much. So this is a very special DigiShift we've got this time. So we've got Beth Kanter, who, for those of you who don't know, is the author of the Happy Healthy Nonprofit and the Networked Nonprofit. And without sounding too gushing, Beth is probably one of the reasons I got into doing what I'm doing just now through reading her blog quite a few years ago. That's quite exciting. So you're the reason I don't work for a bank, Beth. This is good. Thank you very much. Beth has done a lot of work in this space for a number of years pre-COVID in terms of how you keep healthy, happy organisations online, how you keep a healthy workplace culture online, and some of the tools and techniques that you can use around that. So we've got a number of questions that came in from people, and we picked out 4 in particular that kind of give a broad spectrum. Beth's going to tackle some of those. She's going to talk a wee bit about what she's going to jump in at before that. And then we're going to open it up for kind of general questions. So I'll hand over to Beth now.
Oh, great. Thank you so much. And welcome to everybody. I'm here in California, and it's early, so I'm still drinking coffee. And so I understand it's probably later your time. So thank you all for spending the end of your day with me. And what I'm doing right now is trying to share my desktop. Let's get this. There we go. Right here. Get it up and running, and you should be able to see my desktop, hopefully. So this is the agenda. And so we're going to run through some introductions. I'm going to model an icebreaker that you can take back to your team. I did do some presentation, just put together a couple of tips on virtual work and virtual meetings. And then we have extended time for Q&A. Some of you submitted some questions ahead of time. I'll kick off with those, and then please add them in the chat, and time for takeaways. I put together some resources. I'll put the slides up there in that bit.ly, maybe right there at the bottom of the screen. We'll show it again. So if you feel like you have to take notes, you don't have to. And I hope that you'll leave this session at least with one idea, one thing that you can do to improve your virtual meetings or remote work. And also in these days, in these crazy days, when we're all living and working and schooling at home, you know, cats, dogs, and kids are welcome in the meeting. Luckily, my college kids are fast asleep because they don't get up till late. So I try to do all my meetings early morning, and the dog's sleeping too. So hopefully he won't be making a guest appearance. And I want to encourage you as much as possible to ask questions and participate in the chat. I probably won't watch it as I'm presenting. I can't do 2 things at once, but there's a whole team here of folks who are going to relay questions. So the first thing I'm going to do is do a poll, and we actually have it. I think that would be John who's queuing up the poll. Are you launching the poll? And I want to know how present you are for this meeting, you know, on a scale of 1 to 5. You know, and 1 is that you have 10 other tabs open, another meeting about to hop into, the dog's barking, and someone just slammed a door in the next room where my kid is, ... That's a 1. And it goes all the way up to 5, which is, I'm totally with you. This video is like a Zen meditation. So let me know, you should see on your screen, what number are you from 1 to 5, knowing 1 is kind of really low, being low mindfulness, low presence. 5 is very high and focused. We'll just give them a few minutes to take the poll. I think, you know, as our days start to blur and we have many meetings and we're living with this uncertainty, it's hard to really focus. I mean, I don't know about anyone else, but I have trouble here and there focusing and sleeping. And so this is a good thing to kind of start meetings to see where people are. So can we see the results? I don't know if it's going to pop up or not. Did it launch?
Oh, is that appearing, John?
Do I need to stop the desk? Oh, there it is. There we go.
There we go.
Okay. All right. So this is interesting. I think it's because it's later in the day. We're seeing more of we have sort of a curve, a bell curve, but with a little bit of a slant towards more focus, which is great. And so I would invite any of you who clicked maybe 1, 2, 3 to think about what you need to do for yourself to have a greater sense of focus and presence. What can you do to turn up a notch or two? And one of the things that I have been doing in a lot of my meetings, and I'm from California, so I can get away with it, but I'm going to subject you all to it. Some people like it, some people hate it, and you can certainly, with any kind of icebreaker or check-in, you can create a culture where it's I pass, and I'm not going to participate, and that's fine. But this is a really good thing if everyone is into it, to do a minute of quiet. And I actually use Insight Timer, and it does a little bell, and it's a timer, and just take some deep breaths and try to, you know, get centered into the meeting. And it does a little warm-up bell. Great. So it's just a full moment of quiet. You know, even in normal times, people are coming into meetings and maybe they're late, or maybe, you know, they've had back-to-back meetings all day, and it's great just to get everybody centered. So the next thing I'm going to do is an icebreaker, sort of a check-in, and and I'm going to do this on the chat with everybody, and this can be adapted in many different ways. It's it comes from the Liberating Structures playbook, and it's for like thinking through how to change your practice, or, you know, we want to get the topic of this session in our mind. So what I'd like you to do is to think about all the complaints you have about online meetings and remote work. What makes them just awful and terrible. And like, if you saw the cat, or if you can see the cat, I stopped sharing, but, you know, that it just makes you want to, ugh. So what I'm going to do is give you a series of 4 different prompts. And then what I'd like you to do is to think about the prompt, type something in the chat, but don't send it. It's okay if you send it, because I'm asking you to do something a little bit different than our normal kind of use of chat. But I want you to think about the prompt, type something in the chat, but wait until I tell you to send it, and we'll have 4 prompts. And I want you to, again, thinking about anything about online meetings and remote work. And so the first prompt is, if only ... Again, think about it. Type your idea into the chat. Don't worry, it doesn't have to be perfect. We don't need perfect. Typos are okay. Incomplete thoughts are okay, but just what comes to mind when you think about all the complaints about meetings. Okay, so let's just all send it now. And then there's a lot of us on the call, and we're going to see the, the chat kind of fly by. If you feel overwhelmed, you can always just look away. It's always good to just look away if you feel overwhelmed when you're looking at the screen. Great. So second prompt is, it makes me ... Think about your answer and type it into the chat. Hold on sending it. Once you've typed it, let's let everyone send. Okay, and we're still seeing. Again, if you're feeling overwhelmed by seeing all the comments flashing by, you can always look away. I do that a lot. It's nice to like move your neck. And third prompt is, I have to ...
So like we're behind the other countries, so don't let people become elastic with it. Encourage them to obviously practice to stay at home and everything with the law, but also like stockpile food.
Would you be able to mute yourself, please?
Gas.
There. Great. I have to tell you a funny story. I was doing this and somebody was unmuted, and at one point it was early on and we were hearing Trump talking, and everybody on the call wasn't particularly wanting to hear Trump talking while we were trying to do the meditation. The chat went wild with, cut that off, mute. All right, so then the last prompt is, I see them coming in, when all is said and done, ... and answer that prompt. Type it into the chat, and now you can begin to send it. Great. Okay, great. So if you go through the chat, as I was sort of seeing them fly by, I was taking note. I see that there's lots of things that can happen, either that we do or that others do, that make this online remote work really exhausting and frustrating and draining. And I also saw that that you're formulating some ideas about you know, how to mitigate these, and then in the end that, you know, that the online meetings and remote work can get better. So that's what we're going to talk about now. I just want to make sure that my desk is my, am I sharing my screen okay, Ross? Is it, everyone can see it? Does everyone see the cat? If you can see the cat, make cat ears in the video. Okay, all right, great, I see the cat ears. All right, so let's talk about how to make online meetings and remote work better. So the first one is, don't wing it alone. And so, like, you know, we're used to sometimes just winging our meetings and not really planning it. And face-to-face, we can kind of get away with it. But with online, because of the technology, it does require a level of planning. And my secret is to create a step-by-step agenda that lays out the time. If it's a new technical tool, I go through it, I rehearse the different features, and I never try to do it alone. You'll notice on this call, there's the team who, you know, we have John, who's being our tech steward and, you know, letting everyone in from the waiting room and queuing up the code, the polls, and muting people when needed. So it's really good to have, you know, it's really good to have more than one person on your team, and it's necessary, and you really have to plan it. As I mentioned, there's this thing called the pit of techno despair, and this is a drawing by my really good friend who's a virtual visual facilitator, Rachel Smith. She's just come up with a book, but she talks about the despondent pit of techno despair is where something really awful happens. And we had it a little when we heard, you know, that person who wasn't muted, or when your camera's not working, or, you know, when the whole meeting gets derailed because one person is having a technical problem. So to avoid that, again, I really believe in like practicing, having some time to make all those mistakes, having information out to folks who may not have all the technology together, or they may not be familiar with the platform. Give them a time separately to sort of play with the tech. A lot of the platforms now have links where people can go and check and make sure that their tech is working well with the platform. So it's really good to have just a practice place to do that. Here's another pro tip. I don't know if we need this so much for Zoom, but I found this really amazing visual guide to Zoom. I've included it in the link of with the resources. And I mean, I guess this would be really good if you're trying to teach your grandparents to use Zoom, or your parents, or someone who's not really technically fluent. But sometimes we have that, and I believe it's really useful to do it no matter whether you're using Zoom. Zoom, thank God, is really easy to use. But still, I've noticed when there were some people who were just getting on it, they were not familiar with it. So it's always good to have some participant onboarding for the technical stuff. The next is assigning meeting roles, facilitator, text stored that I just noted for your staff meetings, having someone who's going to take notes. Maybe you're going to do that collaboratively on a Google Doc, maybe in the chat. Timekeeper, so you don't go over, someone who's watching the clock. And then there's a couple of other roles that I really like that make online meetings more fun. Is a rabbit hole monitor, and that's where we start going down rabbit holes sometimes in our team meetings where we discuss something over and over and over again. And one thing I've started to do, it was a team that was both speaking Spanish and English, so we did have the conejo, which I mispronounced, which is rabbit, and we'd make the rabbit ears. I had to do it with the cat. So anybody can do the rabbit ears, and we agreed to this at the beginning of the meeting, and then we laugh and we say, okay, let's move on. Another way to do that is with Elmo. You can actually, Elmo, it doesn't stand for that cute little Sesame Muppet, but it's enough, let's move on. And when you can actually have people print out pictures of Elmo and then raise them on the video when you've discussed something and it seems to be going over and over and over again. I mean, no one does that, right? With your internal teams. And then there's the Yoda, which is someone who's going to call out something that that no one else is. It's the elephant in the room, or someone's going to say the thing that no one's saying. And you get to a point, that person is the Yoda, and that person is free to say it. So you can have fun with different meeting roles. It makes the meeting less boring. It helps with engagement, especially when we're all at a distance. The other thing is embracing new workplace meeting norms. I don't know if all of you, how many of you, raise your hand if you remember seeing this interview a couple of years ago. He was a Korean security specialist. He was being interviewed, and his kids, who were toddlers, jumped and bombed his interview on television. He was kind of pushing them away. So I think these days, I think we have to be more forgiving. I've seen lots of wonderful children make appearances on meetings, and I've got to share pets. And it's okay, if you have a young child that needs attention, it's okay to mute yourself and leave. And I don't, in these times where it's so bad, why do we have to make people feel bad about their children doing what children naturally do, asking questions or wanting attention from their parents? So I think we're all human here, and I think we have to be forgiving. We can, especially during this period. The next thing is to kind of encourage people to be on camera. And I know, in the beginning, I was really self-conscious about being on camera because I see, we're not used to looking at our face. I'm like, oh my God, look at my hair. Look, I look terrible, and it's distracting. And I would, and I have to be on camera and pay attention the whole time. So ease people to be on camera. There's a couple of little tips here on how to look good on camera. And you'll notice that I have some goddess light on me. You see, it looks like I'm in the golden light in Hawaii, and that's because I have a lamp right off to my side, nothing fancy, and some warm light on my face, and it just illuminates me. So if you have a lamp behind you, if you can put your laptop up so your camera is up at your eyes, and you can also put a piece of white paper underneath that also illuminates you. It's difficult sometimes when you want to see people on camera and the lighting's not good and their face is all dark and they look like they're in the witness protection program or something. The other thing is, this is a bonus tip for Zoom. I'm not sure if the others do this, but in the video settings, there's a little setting that says touch up my appearance, and I'm using it. I think it smooths out wrinkles, or it hides your pimples or something. It makes you look a little bit nicer. So, I'm going to do anything because I can't even get to a hair. I can't have my hair cut. It's the longest it's been since grade school. And of course, if you have a messy background, or if you do have, if you're like I am, I'm in Grand Central Station in my house, and luckily my kids are asleep, but sometimes in the afternoon when I do calls, I'll put on one of the Zoom backgrounds. And that's a settings thing. You can enable it. And if you don't have a powerful enough or new enough computer, you can actually still use it by clicking green screen, but making sure that you're behind a flat, white, plain background. I've also noticed that Microsoft Teams, which also has a video platform, just enabled this feature. And Canva actually has a whole bunch of templates, and you could also make your own. I noticed a few folks here had backgrounds with their logos on it. And I also put a bunch of links into different places where you can get fun backgrounds. And one of them I really like, it's an artist site. You have to pay a couple of, £1 or something for the background, but it's a way to support artists during this time. And the pro tip, of course, is remember how to change your settings back. There's other fun things you can do, and do filters. And apparently this person changed herself into a potato for kind of a fun cocktail hour thing. But when she came into her work team, she'd forgotten that she had done it, and then she forgot how to turn it back. So she was a potato for the whole staff meeting. So remember, if you change a setting, remember how to change it back, so you're not too embarrassed. The next thing is about icebreakers, and I modeled a few, but there's many, many different types of icebreakers you can do. These are some examples of verbal icebreakers you can do, check-ins when you have a smaller team. I think now, because of what we're living in, it's sort of fun to do things that are playful and make people laugh, or think about gratitude. I do have a blog post right there. I'll link it, that has lots and lots of ideas. You can do some things with drawing. You can do lots of stuff. The other thing that's really important is to have energizers. And I use these in face-to-face meetings. I can always feel when I'm in the room, when people are losing, their energy, and you want to and it's even harder, when we're on, when we're staring at the Brady Bunch in Hollywood Squares, to get a sense of what people's energy is. So as much as you can involve people, so here's one, like if you wanted to do a poll, you could, and I'm going to actually stop sharing my screen for a moment. Did it stop? Yes. Okay. So on a scale of 1 to 3, with 1 being exhausted, 2, I'm okay, and 3 being, I'm filled with energy, I could run around the room right now. Put fingers up into the air according to your energy level. So 1, you're exhausted. 2, I'm okay. 3, I have tons of energy. So you can just do a visual. Yeah, okay, so I see a few 1s. Okay, if you said 1, I want you to stand up and start to stretch. The 1s, start stretching, okay? Now, okay, so now, all right, so if anybody can see a 1 who's stretching, follow the rest of you, follow their stretch. Okay, I see, yeah, okay. It doesn't matter who, okay, so just find somebody on the screen, and you may need to do a different screen. I'm gonna check the other. I see somebody there, I see Liz, I'm gonna follow her. So just follow somebody else's. And so these are energizers that you can do. So here's another one, and I'm going to try to get a picture of it. Let's see, here we go. All right, so I'm going to do, it's called a dance off, all right? And what you have to do, I'm actually looking through to find the right music. Okay, there we go, for later. Okay, so right here, this is your dance floor. So I want everybody to, put their hand up. This is the dance floor, okay? You all have to do it. And then this is the dancer. Okay, so everyone put their hand up and put the dancer, okay? And I'm going to now give us some music, and you have to keep dancing. Okay, so have a dance. So now the dance floor is on the wall, like in 2 for 2. All right. Keep on dancing. Keep on dancing. Great. All right, you got my idea. So just having a little bit of fun. Can anybody, does anybody recognize the music I chose? Anyone? It's from the movie Ratatouille, Rat Dash. So I've been, I should give prizes if anybody can recognize that. So let me share my screen again. All right, go back, share. All right. Okay, so this tip, just say no to back Zoom calls without a break. There's a reason why we're all exhausted from this, because we're not used to sitting and staring at people's faces like this, and it's exhausting. So try in your meetings to schedule them maybe to end 5 minutes before the hour, or 10 minutes before the hour, or to start a little bit after the hour, or maybe even 20-minute meetings, and kind of start to make a rule around how many meetings per day you're going to do. I really think that more than 90 minutes for a meeting, that's the upper limit, and then you need a break. And one of the things that you can start doing is to make your meetings shorter, is to start to incorporate asynchronous, which is you're not all meeting in real time, but you set up some tasks or some reading or some responding to a proposal in advance. And then when you get on the call, then you can quickly make some decisions and your meeting can be shorter. And then that reduces the amount of meetings you need, and that reduces the back-to-back-to-back meetings. We're not going to do this today, but Zoom does have the breakout rooms, which allows you to put people into breakout rooms, which looks just like the Zoom interface, but instead of having 100 people or 50 people or 20, you can have 2 or 3 or 4. So you can have a smaller group, more intimate discussion. This is really good. You can do this with icebreakers. You can do it with brainstorming, decision-making, developing action plans or reflections. So let me show you some examples. It's really good to do this along with having like a Google Doc to take notes. So this first one was, this was a workshop I did where actually on this topic, and we had people break out into different rooms and then take notes around that question prompt. And it's really good because if you are the moderator or the host, and if I was doing a workshop in a room, I could see everybody in their small groups, and I would know when they're done, when they start taking out their phones or they start talking or they look bored, then I can bring the group together. But when you send people off virtually into breakout groups, you kind of don't have that sense. But when people are taking notes on the breakout rooms, you can actually see if they're actually doing the work. And as the host, you can visit each of the breakout rooms, and people in the breakout rooms also have a help button they can call. Here's an example of doing decision-making. So we did, some of you may have done dot voting. We've done emoji voting, where everyone's in their small groups. They come up with a couple of ideas. We come together. They put them in the Google Doc, and then we get to vote on the best ideas. Recently, I did I'm on the board of N10, and our board meeting face-to-face was canceled, and we had planned to do our theory of change, the first step of it, but we actually did it online with the help using small groups and also using a Google Sheet to collect the information. And you know what? It was really nice because when I do this in real time, I have small groups working, everyone's doing sticky notes, and then afterwards I have to go out and transcribe all the sticky notes. Well, that step is gone because it's all put into the spreadsheet. You can, okay, it's really important to do a lot of reflection, and we'll do one of these at the end. A good one to do with your team that you meet with regularly is glad, sad, and mad, and have people say, what made you glad about this meeting? What made you sad about this meeting? And what made you mad about this meeting? And that can help you get some information to improve the way that you're leading your meetings. Another way to do it is plus delta, which is what worked well for you during this meeting and what needs to be improved next time. And we're going to probably do a plus delta at the end of this session. So those are just a couple of tips for improving online meetings. And I think at this point, Ross, we'll open it up for Q&A. I know we had a couple of questions that came in advance.
Yeah. So the first one is from Jennifer Goff at Waverley Care. So Jennifer, are you on the call? I think I saw a Waverley Care brand somewhere. Maybe Jennifer's not. There she is. Hi, Jennifer. Yeah. So you'd asked, because I know you put this in a form, so I'm not going to put you in the spot and try and remember what you typed in a form a week ago. So you'd asked, what is Beth's top piece of advice for building a cohesive organizational structure on a digital platform such as Teams or Slack?
Sure. So even if you're using Teams or using, no matter what your platform is, one thing that's platform agnostic is having rituals that you do at every meeting. And rituals are great to have because they're, they become a habit, they become a thing that you do every time, and that consistency actually helps us feel centered and more productive. And the rituals could be anything from doing an initial check-in briefly to see how folks were doing, or asking some of the questions that you saw in those icebreakers. It doesn't have to take up the whole meeting. Or you could actually do, I see a cat walking across, I love it. Welcome, I love that cat, it's a beautiful cat. You can do it at the beginning, but one thing that I have started doing now with some groups that I work with, teams I work with regularly, is that we save it for the end of the meeting. And we call it peaks and valleys. And we save it for the last 10 minutes of the meeting. And if people want to cut out early, they can cut out. Or if people want to stay and kind of have that informal chat, we do it at the end. If you're using Slack, there's a couple of things that you can use. There's a plugin called Hey Taco, and it allows you to give shout outs to other staff members. There's also another one called the Donut Bot. And it randomly pairs people to have coffee together. Now, of course, you can't go out for coffee, but you could do, a virtual coffee together. And so it's just, unstructured one-on-one time. And it's a nice little plugin that works on Slack. Another thing you can do is and you can do this with Zoom, or you can do it on Microsoft Teams with the video, is you can have on social time that's on Zoom or on video. And this could be virtual happy hours, informal socializing time, a pet hour, everybody bring their pet. So those are kind of informal things. TechSoup has been doing these really fun cocktail hours, and everybody brings their beverage. It's an hour and it's all staff. Everybody has to be on camera. And what they do is like a show and tell. So they'll bring something from their house, or it could be their pet, or they'll show somebody their room, their living room or something. And it's just a fun time. Another thing you can do is have, and I haven't tried this, I just read about this and I heard some people doing it and I thought it might be fun, is to just have co-working time where you're all like together, but you're working like you would to simulate what you might have in an open office if you're back in one space. Some managers are doing office hours, drop-ins. There's also in Slack or Microsoft Teams, you can set up a whole channel that is the water cooler, or it's the, right now I have a team that we're doing well-being and self-care, talking about what we're going to do to take care of ourselves. I have another team where they're all bakers and like to cook, so they're sharing recipes. So there's like an informal channel for people just to chat.
Brilliant. Thanks, Beth. Okay, the next one is from Claire, and you touched a wee bit on this already in the call. So Claire McGinley from Paisley YMCA, who has the amazing background that you can see there. So Claire would like to learn more about how to keep positive connections with her team and support their well-being at this time of social distancing.
So I think check-ins are really essential. I think another thing too, when you're fully on a meeting is, okay, everybody, let's clap now. All right, I'm not doing it. I'm not going to stop until everyone puts their hands together and claps. Come on. Don't be shy. Yeah, come on. Yeah. I mean, having things where, you have, feedback that visible feedback that you can see, or a laugh moment in the meeting. So that's really important. I think one-on-one, especially if you're managing folks, that one-on-one check-in time is really essential. And the best question you can ask is, how are you doing? If it's an HR kind of check-in, be careful about using Zoom. There are, if it's a highly private kind of check-in, I might not want to use Zoom. I might just use the phone. Another thing I have been experimenting with is, and I've been using my mobile phone. I have Zoom, and I also have FaceTime and another app called House Party. And we've been taking virtual walks together. So those of us who can walk in our neighborhoods or might have dogs, we get on the phone and take the dog out, and we're all there and we can see each other. Then we can show each other our neighborhoods and our dogs. And it's just another way to also get fresh air. As much as you can do things that support folks, another group that I'm working with, one of their staff members got sick with COVID. So everybody on staff wrote a handwritten get well note to that person. So, there's lots of things that you can do. If there's anything that you have been doing in the workplace to help with work well-being, think about ways that you could do it virtually.
It's brilliant advice, Beth. Yeah, and just say to everyone else, if you've got your own kind of insights, stick them in the chat, and we're pulling all this stuff together. So Jen and Siobhan are doing an amazing job at kind of pulling some of this stuff, and Jen's pulling it into the main document, which everyone's got access to. All these links that Beth has mentioned, so things like Hey Taco have been dropped into the chat as well, so you'll have access to those. So next one is Anne Callahan from Campaign to End Loneliness. And her question is around what are the visual or audio cues we should consider in trying to build connection or provide comfort if we're only restricted to video calls? It's quite a good question now.
Sure. So first, are people smiling? I'm looking at you all. See, as I've been talking, I've been using that arrow and I've been studying faces. And I also see a question here, not everybody's on camera, and that's okay. And it's okay to turn it off, to turn off the camera, especially, if you need to attend to a kid or if you're just exhausted, that's okay. But try to make it the norm to be on camera. So smiling, there's one little trick that you can tell, and I'm going to see if I see it. There's one little trick, especially when you get crickets and it's your team meeting or it's your board meeting. Is that you can actually see if somebody, by their eye pattern, how their eyes are moving, if they're actually reading their email or doing something else, or if they're engaged. You can tell. And at N10 board, we've always had virtual meetings, and the chair was facilitating, and all of a sudden she started to say, call on me, Beth, what do you think? And she caught me because I was answering an email. And then I said to her, how did you know I was typing an email while we're on the meeting? She goes, oh, I was watching your eyes. And when the eyes start going back and forth, you can just watch me. I'm going to pretend I'm, doing an email. So you can see my face versus this, it's not easy. You also don't have tone. We have video. It's really hard to tell tone. So I think it's a really good practice not to immediately project that somebody is feeling one way or another, but to kind of, and if you're concerned about it, to kind of draw them out with open-ended questions to get them to talk about it. Yeah. There's also, I want to say Zoom has that feature. You have to have the newest client, but you can give, you can do applause. It's right down on the lower bar there where it says reactions. So you can ask for people, let's see, I want a reaction to it. Do we have a thumbs up? And you can do it virtually. I see I see the thumbs up. Okay, I see the thumbs up going. Or you can do, raise your hand, try to get visual cues. Brilliant,
thank you. Final one. So Hera Hussein from Chain, Hera couldn't make the call, unfortunately, but her question was, this is quite a good one. So how can we reduce the number of calls to make time for work and deep thinking?
Oh gosh. I've been working from home for over 30 years. And I was really, for me, the switch initially was like, oh, this is not going to be any different. I don't have to adjust to working in my pajamas. I've been doing that, but when this all started, I just found there was such a huge influx of just emails and work and things I had to do that I stopped. My boundaries around making quiet time to get the quiet stuff done just felt, I won't say a bad word, but they fell to S. And then I realized I was really not, I was taking in so much information and having so many meetings, I just wasn't concentrating. And I realized like 2 weeks into it, I need to like make sure that I have time, that I'm away from the computer, that I'm not on a Zoom call, that I'm not answering emails, and that I'm just really doing focused kinds of work, like putting a presentation together or writing a report. And the first time I made myself do it, it felt so good. So I guess the answer is, and it's hard, is to make sure that when you plan your day, that you have some ritual times, whether it's the morning or it's midday, where there's just not anything scheduled, and you have that quiet time, and you try to make that a norm within your team.
Brilliant. That's great, Beth. I'm going to hand over. So I'm going to hand over to Maddie just now, because you're probably all sick of me talking. So Maddie can choose some people who want to ask questions. We'll probably just use the kind of fingers up prompt, and then we can scan through your many faces and then decide who we're going to ask to come in.
And I'm seeing some really fabulous ideas and some things here that I would love to know more about.
Sure.
I think Mohammed just said something about, I have 11sies with my team daily for 30 minutes where we are not allowed to talk shop, a good way of chatting. So that's great. So kind of like a quick regular meeting where you just check in and you're being human. Fantastic idea. Thank you, Mohammed, for sharing that.
Okay, Maddie, will we pick some people for questions? Let's do that. Okay. Does anyone want to ask a question? You just stick your finger up, and then we'll pull someone in, and you can ask Beth a question. If you've all got the fear of Zoom questions, it's fine.
I think we've got Ali from Be More Human. Go for it, Ali.
Great.
Yeah, thanks. I guess the question is the problem I've got is the type of interaction that people feel confident giving over these types of meetings can vary massively. So whilst I might be really, really progressive and trying to bring the best out of people, any top tips about how we can kind of design inclusive spaces so people don't feel put off by trying to do like warm cups of tea and all do that, or staring into each other's eyes, and all kind of really progressive stuff that you might kind of like, and others might feel really put off by that. Is there anything from your experience to help us find the middle ground?
Sure. I mean, yeah, I know that some people don't want to do the dance floor thing or have fun, that might be not their cup of tea, so to speak. I mean, one technique, so you don't have people staring, crickets, I call it crickets. You put a question out, like how, whatever the question is, maybe related to work, and you just get people not responding. And so one technique is to actually, you have to be more direct and as the facilitator, and you have to call on people. And one way to do it is, to say, okay, so, and it also might be that people don't know when to speak because they don't want to overtalk another person. So it's going to be, okay, we're going to have some discussion now on this proposal. And I'm going to call on folks. I'm going to call on Ali first, and then I'm going to call on Mandy. And then, Ali, why don't you share? And then, okay, let's go to Mandy. And after Mandy, I'm going to hear from Maggie and Marianne. So you do the 2 by 2, and that gives people a chance to, prepare. It's a little bit artificial, but it's one way to get the conversation going. I've been a board member of a couple of national organizations where we didn't have a chance to meet face-to-face all the time, and we met on Zoom, and that's the way we would handle it. Another way would be if there was a proposal that we had to review, we actually had 5 minutes of reading time during the meeting, and we'd have the proposal up on a Google Doc, and we tell folks to take your video off, to put, mute yourself. Here's the link to the proposal. It's only, 2 pages. Go read it and put your comments in on it, on the Google Doc, or put them in the chat, and then we'll come back in 5 minutes. And when you come back in 5 minutes, if you're facilitating the meeting, you look and see what the comments are, and then lead the discussion, and then call specific people out who made the comments. I don't know if that answers your question. If you give me a thumbs up. Okay, 2 thumbs up. Wow, thank you. So that's another way, is to we don't have that feedback because I'm staring at you, Allie, and I was trying to figure out, okay, did I answer his question, or did I not answer it correctly? So you can just ask for feedback. And if you give me this, I would say, okay, can you unmute yourself? And if you gave me this, or other hand signal that I'm not going to do, I would ask you to unmute yourself. And then, can you tell me more about your question? Okay.
I'm looking for other fingers up. I don't know if you can spot any, Maddie.
No middle fingers, right?
No.
Yeah, Pauline Roach, you've got a...
Hi, Beth. My question was about trustees, people doing governance at this time. What do you think their role is? Because I think they have a specific role, and now you've written about it before. It'd be good to hear what your thoughts are about this time and governance.
Oh, okay. So this, as unrelated to online meetings, but just in general. In fact, I'm facilitating a webinar on best practices in nonprofit governance. And for Candid, it's on May 7th. I'll try to drop a link in there. But so here's my take. I'm on 2 different boards right now. I'll give it to you from the board members' point of view. And I would believe that the CEOs that are CEOs of these organizations would agree. Having a really good partnership between the board and the CEO is essential. And especially now, to be able to move quickly. I'll give you another example. We, at N10, in the US, they have, the government opened up something called the CARES Act, and to provide money to small businesses and nonprofits. And there was a program called the PPP, which was the Payroll Protection Program. I don't know if they're doing similar things in the UK, but organizations could apply to get a loan to cover their payroll. But it was sort of first come, first serve, and you had to get that application in really fast, and you had to have an existing relationship with a banker. And so we couldn't wait to have a whole full board discussion about it and what are the pros and cons. So we just said, we tasked the CEO saying, go figure it out, which program, and get your application in. She did that within hours after it opened. And I remember I'm the secretary of the board. So she sent me a form there's a text saying, look at your email, there's a form, you have to sign it right away. So I signed it, we got it in, and we actually just got the loan approved. So we're really lucky that we were able to be agile and work fast. So governance these days we can't aim for perfection and have to go through every single step and rule and order. We have to have a lot of trust and agileness in our staff and work together as a team. Yeah, because I have heard lots of complaints from other CEOs about their boards are moving too slowly, or the boards are not wanting to get back really quickly to help make decisions. Or I'm also hearing from boards saying, oh, when did this decision happen? So we have to be a little bit more agile.
We've got, there's a couple more questions that I think are in the chat box, Ross. Siobhan sent through. There's been 2 around introverts versus extroverts, around how to get input.
Yeah.
I'm not sure who asked that, if you want to give Beth a bit more information.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'll just have a look. Yeah. So, I think Anne had asked that, and Ian as well, actually.
And Waverly.
So, Ian, do you want to come in and ask your question, actually? You're about... I saw you in bed.
Okay. So believe it or not, I am right on the middle of the introvert-extrovert scale, because and introverts doesn't mean that their people are shy. It means that they need time to think through what they're going to say, and they get exhausted with too much conversation interaction. And then there's a scale of introverts. So one thing to do is to provide advance information about the meeting, like what topics are going to be discussed, what reading needs to be done before, and to allow folks to become prepared. You can also do the technique, I mentioned it before, where you give some reading time in the meeting for people to to type in their comments. I have one team where I have two really strongly introverted people, and they will never speak up. They never speak up. And unless they're called on, and not at the beginning of the meeting. And so what we do now is we tell them, they put a lot of their ideas and thoughts in the chat as we're discussing something, and we acknowledge, Jenna just put something in the chat. It's really interesting. Jenna, do you feel like you want to, can you say more about that? And then she'll unmic and talk. So it's like making a bridge for them. The other thing, and the extroverts really hate this, I've done it a few times, it's actually kind of fun, is we have a silent meeting, and we just do it, we turn our videos off and we just do it in the chat all in one time. And you have a series, I did it in the beginning with a series of prompts, and you could, and what you would do is one person would be the verbalizer to verbalize the prompts. People type in all the things and answers, and then you would actually, you would, I'm seeing a couple of patterns in the responses. I'm seeing A, B, C, and D. Jenna, do you want to type in more about your point about C in the chat? And then she types in her chat, and then you say others. Okay. Any other comments on that? So, or you can make it completely silent, where you have a series of, someone's asking a series of questions and people respond and it's completely silent. Extroverts hate that. Introverts love it.
Great advice, yeah. Do you know, one of the things I actually wish that Zoom had was the functionality for emojis in Zoom, so you could quickly drop in reactions the same way you can in Slack, because I think it would make a huge difference in terms of people who don't feel comfortable speaking or don't want to talk over people, just giving that reaction without necessarily the kind of constant thumbs up, or yeah, I've seen some kind of weird ones in terms of giving feedback. Any other questions for Beth? We've probably got time for maybe one or two more, maybe. Any interesting ones coming in from the chat?
We've had
I'm seeing Padlet for Post-its. Something just.
Sorry.
Oh, that's all right.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
That's just the one I was going to read out.
Oh, okay. Yeah, Liz, you're about, aren't you? You're in. Liz, do you want to jump in and?
Well, someone just asked, is there something you could use like you would use Post-its in a face-to-face meeting and that's anonymous? And so I just suggested Padlet, because people can comment on that anonymously. Obviously, if they've got an account, they should log out if you want it to be anonymous. But that's quite an easy tool.
Jamboard too. Jamboard, Google Jamboard, which is it's a really simple, let's see if I can, it's a super simple whiteboard that does have the sticky notes, and it's anonymous.
Yeah, Miro is quite a good one as well. It's quite nice to use. Yeah, sometimes a Google Doc is enough for people, and it's kind of simple and it's less tricky. But yeah,
there was one question that I got that Siobhan sent me from the chat box, which was around overwhelm. So what techniques or tips do you have for preventing feelings of overwhelm when a lot of information has to be communicated to virtual teams over a short period of time? That's quite a big question, I think.
It is. So then there's a lot of information that needs to be communicated. Chunking helps, and also divide and conquer. So maybe, thinking about, does everybody need to know about all of this information? Is there a way to have folks, assign certain sections or different pieces of information to different people, and then to read and be sort of the expert in that one document? And then when you come together and other people can scan it, giving people, what we do at N10 board, we do have sometimes a lot of information that needs to be looked at, but the way we sometimes structure it is, if you only have 20 minutes, read this. If you only have 30 minutes, read this. If you have an hour, read this. So, and the information that is being shared, if it can be organized, well in a Google Drive, if it's a lot of documents, sending people like 50 attached documents on an email, that's really overwhelming. But if you want to put it in, link them up in a Google document, so there's some sort of structure to it, things and order and being prioritized, that would be a really good thing.
That's great advice, yeah. Any other questions coming in that you can spot, Maddie?
Okay, so I think it looks
hang
like
on. Sorry, Mandy. There was two. Sorry, there was two. I was too busy looking at the other page. There was Mandy, and I can't see the one. Is it Godzilla? Sorry, is that you? Taking my glasses off, so I can't see now. Sorry.
Okay, who's coming in first?
Shall I go first? Hello, this is Mandy.
Hi, Mandy. How are you?
Hi, I'm good, thank you.
Thank you for that wonderful sketch note, by the way.
I'm working on another one now of this call, so you'll be getting another one soon. Thank you. I just wanted to ask, I had a Zoom call the other day and with a group of very quiet people and one person who loved the sound of his own voice. Do you have any tips for chairing virtual meetings to keep the loud people a little bit less loud and bring up the voices of the quieter people?
One thing I have done, and it's a meeting ritual, and I've done things where I've had where the group dynamics were just like that. It wasn't just one person; there were a couple people, and who spoke all the time, and other people laid back, and it happened to be gender based. So I said, I want to invite those of you who tend to talk more at our meetings to mute yourself and allow space for those of us who don't usually speak. And I want to encourage those who don't usually speak to speak up. And I'm going to actually call on people. Or you can also do it where if there is a person speaking up and they start to speak up and you're the host of the meeting, you can mute them and mute them midstream and say, oh, Tom, we've heard from you already on this, but we haven't heard from Mandy or Beth. Beth, what do you think? That's a little bit more aggressive way to do it.
Sometimes necessary.
Yeah, sometimes necessary.
Yeah.
I really like the rabbit hole one. I think like people might take a wee bit of time to get used to that, but it could be really valuable. It's just some people just go off on tangents and the whole Zoom call is gone. So yeah, that's an excellent piece of advice. Okay. Would we have time for one more, do we think? Who was it, Maddie, that was about to come in there actually?
Godsel.
Yeah, that's it, Godsel, that's it.
There we go.
Sorry, just working out how to unmute. Hi, I just wanted to ask about how to facilitate kind of free creative chat, not shutting down that kind of thing, because quite often in meetings that I have, I want everybody to discuss something and for it to go round and round and for it not to shut down.
It's okay, it's okay, it's okay.
They're a bit more like brainstorming, sorry, loud children running about.
So from what I heard, so you're asking how can we use the chat for brainstorming?
Well, it's kind of more, yes, well, sort of like facilitating chat, which maybe brings up ideas. So it's not about me being the chair of the meeting and saying, what's your thought and what's your thought, just to kind of maybe have more of a round table conversation. I find it much harder in this sort of setup.
Yeah. A couple of things. One thing you could do is, okay, so let's brainstorm a little about how we might solve this problem. And so the brainstorming question is, and you have to have it, how might we solve this problem that we're facing? Let's give everybody a few minutes to think about it, and maybe write up some ideas in the chat, but don't send it, and let's all send them together. And then go back through the chat and call on people to share what their idea is a little bit more. That's one way. Another way is you could do the same thing on, if it's a large group of people meeting, sometimes they say the rule for brainstorming is that you shouldn't have more people at a brainstorming session that could eat a pizza. So 6 or 7 people tops, or else it allows something called social loafing, where somebody can just sit back and not participate. So you might want to use the breakout groups and pair them up with a Google Doc and have them go through, have the brainstorming question there and have them, quietly think about their ideas and to all type them in the Google Doc and then discuss them, combine them or prioritize the best ideas, and then all come back together on the call and have each small group share what ideas they came up with.
Okay.
That's brilliant.
That's good.
Thanks, Beth.
Thank you.
I'm glad it's not just me that has children running about causing mayhem, so that's good. That's reassuring. Okay.
I have a husband running about, and I've had to, like, you don't see it, but I have a sign under my, you can't see me, but my hand under here is saying, don't come in here.
Like a broomstick kind of prodding them. Like
yes. I need a sign that says, don't come in this room.
Yeah. I think we've kind of run out of time. Yeah, we're just over 5 o'clock. So anything you want to kind of give us or say in terms of wrapping up, Beth?
Sure. This, I think we're all going to be masters of virtual work, depending on how long this lasts. And so so the idea to getting better at it is to just take one thing and think about what that one thing that you want to do and put it into practice. And I just want to save just a minute here before you all dash off. I wanted to do what worked well about this meeting in the chat, if you could throw that in the chat, and what could be improved. And just say, with your comment, do worked well, do that and say what it is, improve and say what it is. If you just take a few minutes in the chat, that's my plus delta. And that's something that you should do at every meeting, is get advice from the participants. And then I always take those ideas and I think about, okay, what can I try next? Based on this.
Yeah, I think that's good advice. Is actually I've been scribbling like so many notes like as this has been going, and there's so many great bits of advice, from the kind of technical stuff to the kind of techniques that you might use. So just for everyone to not feel overwhelmed, and actually just, as Beth said, pick that one thing that you can do next that's going to make an improvement to how you manage your team or how you collaborate with your members or your beneficiaries. But just start with that one small thing.
Oh, but my fear that no dancing, just finger dancing. Yes, I keep on trying to think up more silly things to do as energizers. So be warned if you're on a call with me. As someone actually said to me on Twitter, I would never come on a meeting with you. And I'm saying, okay, that's fine. You can opt out. Because I would never want to do a check-in, or I would never want to do an energizer. And that's okay. I mean, there's some people who don't, and that's fine.
Yeah. Some really good feedback coming there. Yeah, someone saying
cake. I like that. Yes, definitely cake. or alcoholic beverages, but it's too early for me. I'm still on tea and coffee time.
Some really good stuff. Okay. Any final thoughts or points from you, Beth, before I kind of wrap things up?
No, but I just want to remind folks that you can, if you've allowed it, hopefully you have, up in the right-hand corner of the chat, there's that ... You can click on that. You can save the chat if there were some ideas there that you wanted to remember. And just, this is not the time for perfection. So we have to, we're not going for elegance, we're going for speed. And that in doing that, we just have to remember that this is not normal times. It's not that we're just working from home, we're working at home, trying to school our children, trying to work with our partners, or trying to work completely alone in the middle of a global health crisis. So be gentle on yourself and keep calm and keep going.
Good advice, yeah. So we'll be pulling all this stuff together in a document, the Google Doc, which Jen will probably ping the link back in. So all these resources and tools and kind of best practice, we can kind of scoop up into there. You can follow Beth on Twitter, so it's @Kanter with a K if you're interested in all the amazing stuff that she's doing. Yes, thanks so much, Beth. That was incredibly useful. And I guess just to say as well, thank you to Jen, who I work with, and also Siobhan, Maddie and John from the SCVO digital team, who have been keeping things going. And as Beth said at the start, with these kind of bigger calls, it does require a team of people to kind of keep facilitating and keep it kind of ticking over. We also have, there's the Did You Listen podcast, where we gather up the best bits from all these calls, and that goes out. So you can get that on Spotify now. So did you listen? Anything else, Maddie, Siobhan, or John, that you want to kind of add in from your side of things? No.
Yeah, we've got there's an inquiry form as well that SCVO have got out where you can ask for support and book a call to speak to somebody around digital issues. So that's there and that's out there. So please do fill it out, let us know, speak to us. You can get in touch with us via Twitter, email, even telephone now, which is unusual for our team. So please do reach out and speak to us, and we'll do what we can.
Brilliant. Thanks, Maddie. Excellent. Great. Thank you all for coming, and thanks again to Beth for facilitating. This has been brilliant. It's been really good. It's been excellent.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Right.